Warm welcome to this video. In this video, we'll be building this Etch a Sketch application, and it's actually part of the Odin project. So first thing I want us to do is actually to look at the features of what we'll be building. The first button over here, named Grid, actually toggles the visibility of the grid lines. Next thing we can do also with this application is change the resolution of our sketch area. Obviously we can draw, and there's a button here for shade which creates a shading effect, meaning that we can just have this nice shading effect. We can select different colors. Let me turn off the shading effect. Sorry. Okay, so this green color, we can change the colors as you saw. Let's change to another color, yellow. The next thing we can do is actually click on this button and get random colors. We also have an eraser which you can use to erase anything we've sketched. And then finally, this clear button that we click gives us an alert which says your sketch would be deleted. If we click cancel, it just returns us here. But if we click OK, it clears the screen. So this is what we'll be building. Let's move right into the code. So the first thing we'll do is open up my VS Code. I have already created a folder here called Etch a Sketch, and I have opened that folder in my VS Code. To do that, you just come to File, Open Folder, and you find the file on your computer. Then I went ahead to create these three files. That's index.html, scripts.js, and styles.js. So in our index.html file, we're going to put in some boilerplate. Okay, so let me just type this out real quick. So we have doc type HTML. I'm sure you've seen it before. Then we'll have our HTML tag. And we have to set the language to English, so EN. And then in here we'll have our head tag and our body tag. And our head tag, we're going to put in a tag for a meta tag for our character set that we're using. So that will be char set UTF-8. And we're also going to add for some meta tags for some compatibility of different browsers and screen sizes. Okay, so I'll just copy that just so I can quickly do that and not make any mistakes. So we have one for our viewport and then one for compatibility with Internet Explorer. Then in our head tag again, would add a link to our style sheet. So the rel will be style sheet, and the href, the location of the file, is just right in this folder, and it's named styles.css. And close our link tag. Then we also want to add a title. Okay, we're just going to call it Etch a Sketch. Then we finally want to go into our body and also include a script tag so that we can connect the JavaScript we'll be writing in our scripts.js file. So the source is obviously scripts.js. So I think that's fine, but we also just want to add a div here, an ID of sketch, sketch, oh, if only I could spell, sketch area, and then a class of container. Okay, so we can go ahead and save that. Then we won't be seeing anything. Let's just let's just test it out. I hope you have live server installed. If you don't, you just have to come to, it's an extension, so you come to the extensions tab over here and you just search live server. Okay, and it's this first one by Ritwick Day. Okay, so you just click on that and install it. It will give you a button over here which you can click to run the live server, or you can just use the shortcut Alt-LO. Okay, mine is open on my other screen, so it just opens at this IP address and opens your file index.html. So we have our title, which we put here, Etch a sketch, over here in our toolbar. Let me just rearrange my screen a little bit more. Okay, and let me reduce this a little bit. Also reduce this a little bit for some more space. Okay, so it seems everything is working well. Let's click Ctrl-Shift-I to look at developer tools. Okay, so we just have one error here. I don't think it's something we have to worry about at the moment. It has to do, I think, with the favicon. Yeah, so it's not anything we need to worry about at the moment. Okay, so it seems like everything is fine. We would move on to the next thing. So the next thing we're going to do is to go into our scripts.js file, and we're going to create our 16 by 16 grid with Flexbox. So we'll be using Flexbox. Okay, so the first thing we'll type here is we'll create a constant. We're going to call it grid side, which is basically going to be the size, is going to be the size of the side of our grid. Then we're going to create two more variables, one called rows, and it's going to be 16, and then one called calls, and it's also going to be value 16. And the next thing, create another constant. I'm going to call it sketch area. It's going to be equal to, use the document, and then we're going to use query selector, then the div we created in our index.html with the ID sketch area. We're going to select it. So in here, put our hash, then we go type our ID name, sketch area. Okay, so this should select our sketch area for us, document.query selector sketch area. And we're going to go ahead, take that sketch area, then we'll add a style. So sketch area.style.width equal, we'll use backticks, put in our $sign. I hope you know what this is. Basically, we are using that backticks, and we are able to use this dollar sign, curly braces, and then in here we can put some JavaScript. In this case, we'll be putting our grid side constant. Then at the end, we'll be putting pixel. Okay, so that when we use our sketch area, then we try to set the width, we can use the number we are using for our grid side, and then we tack on the pixel width. In this case, 600 pixels will be the width. Okay, so we can go ahead and do the same thing for the height. Sketch area dot style dot height equal, we'll use a backticks dollar sign, then in here we'll put grid side and then pixel. Okay, then we'll create a function which will create our grid cells. So we'll call the function create grid cells. We'll put in here a for loop. Okay, so let I equal 0, I less than rows times columns. So for each cell, for each grid cell, so the total number of grid cells we are going to have is obviously the rows times columns. So that's why we want our for loop to run that many number of times and create, so that it can create that many number of cells for us. Okay, so let's create another constant in here. We'll call it grid cell. Select document, and we are going to create an element, and it's going to be a div. Okay, so we are creating divs actually as our cells. So we'll select our grid cell, then we are going to create the width. Okay, so the width is actually going to be the grid side divided by the number of columns. So get our grid side again, divided by the number of columns. So columns. So we're doing it this way so that when it comes to the point where we have to increase or reduce the resolution or the number of columns and rows, the number of cells, we can easily just do that, because we are not using hard-coded values, but we're using variables, or variables in this case, the number of rows and columns, so that we can change that later. And then this calculation will always be able to get the grid cell width and heights right. Okay, so it's actually going to be this. Let's put them in some brackets, because we'll need to also subtract 2. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing for the height. Okay, is equal to divided by rows minus 2. So the 2 pixels are for the they're for the borders that will be added. Okay, so we want to be able to calculate the width, the width and the height, but also we want to be able to remove the extra width that will be taken by the that is the border of the cell. Okay, because we want to show our grid lines. Okay, let me just open up the image again so that we can have a look. Okay, so if you look at our sketch area, when we put on our grid visibility, you see that these grid lines also have a width. Okay, so the smallest width you can set for them is 1 pixel, which is what I'll be setting. So for each cell, on the left side we have 1 pixel for the border, and on the right side we have 1 pixel for the border, hence -2. Okay, hence the value -2. And the same thing for the height, we have 1 pixel on top, 1 pixel at the bottom. So that's it. I think as we move on to, we'll be seeing it in the developer tools and other things, so I'm sure you understand it a bit better. The next thing we want to do too is we want to add a class, so a specific class that will have some style, some special styling. So we'll just write that over here. So gridcell.classlist.add. So I want to add a particular class that we are going to name. We haven't created that class yet, but we are going to name it cell. Then later we'll create it in our style sheet or in our CSS. So finally, we would like to append the particular cell we'll create every time the for loop runs to our sketch area. Okay, so very simple piece of code. We're running a for loop. Each time the for loop runs, we create a constant called a grid cell, which is a new div. Then we set the width, the height. Then we add this class that we've not yet created. Then finally we append that to our sketch area. Okay, then finally below here we need to actually call this function, so we can just say create grid cells. Now we just call this function. Let's save this, and then let's move on to our styles.css so that we can create some styling and also create that that cell class which we are adding over here. Okay, so let's get there. So we're going to select star, which is everything. Then in here we are going to set margin to 0 and padding also to 0. You may be thinking, why did we do this? It's actually to prevent certain things with overlapping and just unexpected margins and padding width, because what we are creating is a grid, is a box. If there are any weird margins or paddings over there, it's going to give us some hard time. So we just set for the whole document to have 0 margin and 0 padding, and then as we create our elements specifically, we can actually set the margins, because in CSS or in HTML there are some defaults, so we are just removing those defaults. Basically that's what we are doing there. Next selector will be our body, and then in here we'll just set our background color to the color I'm using in my image, or in the demo, the color that was in the demo is Alice Blue. Okay, so then we'll have to also select our sketch area ID. That's the div we created in our HTML. And then we'll set the display to flex to flex. Okay, and then we'll set our margin to 100 pixels, and then auto. Okay, so the reason why you set your margin to 100 pixels and then auto is you want the sketch area. Let me see if I can open up my image again. Okay, so you want the sketch area to be centered in your browser window. So when you set the value of the top margin, okay, so this is our sketch area, set the value of the top margin and the bottom margin. So this value over here goes for the top and bottom margin, and then this goes for the right and left margins. Okay, so it's some CSS shorthand right there. So on the left side we set it to be auto, and on the right side we set it to be auto. So when you set both sides to be auto, it centers it. Okay, so if we want to demonstrate that, let's just set the background color to white. Okay, so let me just set it to white, and then let's remove this, or let's just comment it out. Okay, and let's comment this out. Let's save. This might not work. Let's just create a. Okay, let's finally create our cell so that our JavaScript doesn't scream at us. So let's just create a border here. So for this cell, we just want to create a border. For now, 1 pixel, make it a solid border, and then we'll use white smoke. Okay, that's our color. Okay, so I think that's okay. Yes, you can save that, and then look. Okay, so from our live server, you see that we have a sketch area which has the width and height of 600 pixels as we set in our script. Okay, has a width and height of 600, but then we see that it has moved up to the left side. Okay, so as I was saying, with this margin, when we remove this comments, and then we set the margin, the top and bottom margin, to be 100. Okay, so first off, let's just set everything to be 100. Okay, let's save that. Okay, so you realize that there's a margin of 100 here, 100 pixels here, and then 100 pixels here. Let's Control Shift I. Let's have a look at that in. Okay, I have an error here. Let me fix it quickly. It says row is not defined. Okay, so I think I made a typo in my scripts.js. It's on line Street.js line 12. I think character 16. So okay, so instead of typing rows and columns, I type row. Okay, so quick fix, save that, and our error is gone. Okay, so so because the error is gone, we also have our cells also showing here. Okay, so fine. So we wanted to have a look at how we will center this div. Okay, if we go to our elements over here, and then we select the div, okay, which is this whole div. Realize I select with the accompanying you can see the part that's like an orange. I don't know whether that's orange. That part is the margin. Okay, so it's 100 pixel around. Okay, if you look at this box model over here too, we can see margin is 100 pixels all around. Okay, so now if we set the right and left to auto, okay, let's save that, it gets centered. So it picks an automatic value for the right and the left, and that's what centers the div. So we see that our div is centered quite easily. Okay, so let's just minimize this, we might need it later. Let me rearrange my screen. Okay, so now the next thing we are going to do is we want these cells to be arranged in such a way that they go all the way up here. When it hits the end of their parent, which is the sketch area, then it starts again all the way here, hits and starts again all the way here. So we are going to be using Flexbox, as I said earlier. So we will need to set our display to flex, and then the next thing we'll do is okay, so the next thing we'll do is actually just add a flex wrap over here. That should do the trick. So flex wrap, it means that when the flex elements hit the end of their parent, they should wrap to the next line. Okay, so let's save that, and voila, we have it. You see, so it just goes all the way here, then it wraps to the next line. Okay, so that's great right there. Okay, we can also just add a box shadow for some aesthetic value. Okay, so just 10 pixels by 10 pixels, and we can just set an RGB. Let me just copy it from my notes, paste it over here. Okay, so just this cool little box shadow over here, and I think for now we are done. So we've been able to create our sketch area and also have all our cells visible, and we added and created our cells from our scripts .js or using JavaScript. So now the next thing we are going to do is actually add an event listener to each of our grid cells. And to do that, we'll just come into this place where into the create grid cells function and into the for loop, so that each time we create a cell, we'll go ahead and just go grid cell, that's the cell that has been created, dot add event listener, and then the event we are listening for is mouse over, comma, change so when we mouse over, you want to just change the background color. So we'll create a function called change background color. Okay, let me check my spelling. Change background color. Okay, let's not forget a semicolon. For now, let me hide that. Okay, so mouse over, change background color. We can come up here and create a function, the function called change background color. Okay, so it's going to do just that. I'm going to go this dot style dot background color equal black. Okay, so let's save that. Okay, so whenever we mouse over any of the cells we've created, the background color should change to black. Okay, so there's something wrong because this is not working. Let me check over what I've done. So grid cell dot add event listener, mouse over, change background color. Okay, correct spelling. Okay, there's a typo here. I need to actually learn how to spell. So background color. Okay, so let's go ahead and save that. Okay, so now whenever we hover over a cell, the background color is changed. So things are looking quite nice, and then we'll just need to move on to the next thing. Things are looking quite nice, but I want to change the name of this function. I want to change it to set background color instead of change background color. I just prefer that. Okay, so let's go ahead and save that, and we see that it's still working. The next thing we'll do is just to do some little refactoring to make our code a bit more concise in a way. Okay, so instead of using let rows and let columns, we want to just use one variable, since they would at every point in time have the same value. So we just call that variable squares per side, squares per side, which I think is a better variable name, squares per side. And then we also want to since these two variables have the same value, want to put them into one line. Okay, so the way we are going to do that is just clear this all the way to the side so that our statement reads sketch area dot style dot width equals sketch area dot style dot height equal grid side px. Okay, then the next thing we would do is inside our create grid cells function, we would add a constant and call it number of sides, number of squares, and it will be equal to squares per side times the squares per side. Okay, nice. Then we'll create another constant, and it's going to have the name width or height, since they are always going to be the same thing, and set the value of that to backticks $, curly braces, get our grid side divided by the squares per side minus 2, and then pixels. Okay, let's put our semicolon, and yep, we have that. Now we can use that in our code so that our code is more readable. We'll check if I is less than number of squares, and then in here we'll set just like we did up there. Sorry about that. We want to put all this on the same line. Okay, so grid cells dot style dot width is equal to grid cells dot style dot height, which is equal to width or height. Okay, so I think our code is a little bit more readable here, and we can move on to the next thing. Okay, so the next thing we are going to do is add that slider from, let me open this up again, this slider over here that we use to change the resolution. So to do that, we are going to move into our index.html, and in our index.html we'll add a div just below. So there's something you need to be careful of. This script tag should always be at the bottom of your all your HTML in your body. Okay, it should always be at the bottom. If it goes higher, it won't work for anything that is below it. Okay, so just as I was saying, right below the div for our sketch area, we're going to add another div. Okay, and then we are going to give it an ID of slider container, because we would want to style that, and also select it from our JavaScript. Okay, so slider container, and then in this div we are going to put in an input tag, and the type is range. Okay, since it's a slider, the minimum value is 1, maximum value is 100, and the starting value is 16. Okay, we add a class to, class will be slider, and then an ID of slider. Okay, then just below this we need a place to show what the current resolution is, so create a p tag and we'll give it an ID of slider value. Yes, so I think that is it for our index.html. Now we'll move to our scripts.js, and here you're going to bring in a few of the stuff, or we're going to bring in the stuff we just created. So we'll create a constant. I'm going to name it slider container, and we'll select it using document dot query selector slider name is slider container. Then we'll move on to const. We'll bring in the slider itself, which is the input in the slider container. Dot query selector, and the ID is slider. Okay, then the slider value is going to be document dot query selector slider value. Hope I haven't made any typos. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is get the slider value, and then we would put in a text content. So we'll set the text content. The text content should be equal to, you need to get use our backticks and get slider dot value as the value set for the black slider, obviously. And then we'll put in an X here to represent by, so we expected to get 16 by 16. Okay, then we get the slider value again from here. So that's going to be slider. Okay, put our dollar sign first. Slider dot value. Then into brackets, we're going to put the word resolution. Let's not forget to put our semicolon. Okay, so the next thing is we want to put the value of the squares per side as a parameter into our function and create grid sides. So we'll put it here, squares per side. Okay, yeah, so that when we call it, we can put a value here. Okay, so that will be 16, then later we can change it and so on. Now we also want to add a function that would be used to remove the cells, because obviously if you want to apply the slider, we create the cells using the function create grid cells, but we should be able to also remove the cells, and then we'll create another set of cells with a different value. So let's create that function. I will call that function remove grid cells. So we use a while loop. We scroll up. So we'll say while the sketch area dot first child. So that will actually select the first child in the sketch area, which were the cells that we created. So the first child. So we're saying that while that first child exists, we want to go ahead and say sketch area dot remove child. So we want to remove the child. Okay, then sketch area dot first child. So basically what we are doing is we are checking if there's a first child, then we remove it, then we check if there's a first child, then we remove it. So anytime we remove one first child, the second child becomes the first child. So it just keeps on going like that until the whole set of cells are all removed. It's been about 40 something minutes, and I think that we've gone through a lot in this video. So I want to end things here, and in the next video we'll build out the slider itself and work on its functionality and also style it so that it looks exactly the way we want to, and then we'll finish up the project. Thank you for your time, and I hope to see you in the next video.